My friends, we begin with a bombshell of a news that comes from the Dnipro bridgehead of Kozachki Lagery. I'll zoom into it. The news comes from the Ukrainian side that Ukrainians have deployed 2 pontoon bridges from the settlement of Ponyativka, this settlement right here, going over the Dnipro river to these swamplands, because that's the way you call them, there's nothing else here, swamplands. Now the thing is, this information has not been confirmed by satellite imagery. I'm reporting what the Ukrainian sources are reporting, and the Ukrainian sources might report this because this is Saluzhny's information operation, and let's go into it. Why is it good for Saluzhny to make up such an information if it isn't real? Well, the thing is, as I said, this here is all swamplands. You cannot traverse any kind of armor over these swamplands. The first area that could hold any kind of significant heavy armor are these fields right here. And the distance here is quite long and filled with different waterways. You would need many different pontoon bridges to get tanks from Ukrainian-held side of the Dnipro to these fields. So deploying pontoon bridges over the Dnipro river to these swampland areas wouldn't do much if you wouldn't also deploy pontoon bridges over the Ustup river, over the Koinka river, and then, only then, you would reach these fields and could use your armor. All of this would take a lot of time to traverse these swamplands and waterways, giving the Russian aviation and artillery time to target the pontoon bridges and the heavy armor and logistics crossing the rivers. So this is why I think this is an information operation. Now, it is still reported by the Ukrainians that these bridges are here, but I think it's an info op, because there would be no point in deploying pontoon bridges into the swamplands. What is the goal of such information? Is it fake or real? I cannot say in this video. I'll leave it up to you to decide. I'm just giving you the information that I am getting. What is the goal of releasing this information from the Ukrainian side? Well, the goal is to get the Russian side to deploy their forces back onto the Kherson front. All of these bridgeheads, I think, serve the same purpose. Any kind of Russian deployment back to this area would be a huge victory for Ukraine, because the only places Russia could take these forces from are the southern front and the eastern front, and both of these fronts Ukraine is pushing. So any kind of Russian detachment that leaves these fronts makes it better for the Ukrainians. Whether these pontoon bridges here are real, it is yet to be seen in the tomorrow's or after tomorrow's satellite imagery. If they're not real, then you know it. It is Saluzhny's information operation, and quite successful, I would say. Russian media has recently begun sharing stories about Russian POWs in Ukraine, who are saying, reporting, or telling to the reporters that they don't want to be exchanged back to Russia until this war or the hostilities are over, because they fear that the Russian command structure might just send them back to the front line immediately. And there is some merit to this claim, because this was the practice in the Soviet Union in the Second World War, and in all of the wars actually, when Soviets gave themselves as POWs and were traded back, they were immediately sent back to the front lines to get killed, because in the Soviet military doctrine, and right now in Russia, it is labeled as shameful and almost betraying to give yourself as a POW. As we saw with Major Tomov, Russian military bloggers were saying that he should have taken his life with a grenade, then give himself up as a POW. So this sends a message to all Russian POWs in Ukraine that they are not welcome back to their homeland, because they will be disgraced, sent to the front, imprisoned, or they will disappear. That is their future. Also, they're treated quite good in Ukraine. They're given work, food, and actually minimal pay also. Some of them don't want to be exchanged back at all. They don't want to go back to Russia. Now, in the recent month, we have been getting more reports of Russian soldiers deserting. And of course, this is coupled with alcoholism, especially on the southern front, because the situation is very dire. As we saw during the last week's report, the liberation of Staromayorsk and Uruzhaina, the shameful Russian retreat from Uruzhaina, taking insane losses due to cluster munitions, the rampant alcoholism, the fact that Russian tank crews in the southern front refuse to cover their infantry. This all spells out the insanely low morale, alcoholism, and huge desertions going on in the front. And this, in turn, spells out the Russian need for another wave of mobilization. I'm not talking about a hidden mobilization, the real one. I've said it before, I'm saying it again. I think Russia will declare a new wave of official open mobilization at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Otherwise, they cannot replace the losses on the front. If they don't declare it, Ukraine will just take back the territories, and this Russia cannot allow. So there will be another mobilization. Yesterday, Russia commenced another large-scale missile attack against Ukrainian, I would say, civilian and food security infrastructure. For example, on this one, you can see the grain storage of Odessa destroyed. Well, you can say this grain is not destroyed. You can still use it by sorting it, but it is. Nobody will buy this grain anymore. It is destroyed. It has to be thrown away. Now, this is a direct attack against Northern African and also European food security. Russia knows what they're doing. This is not a coincidence. They are targeting food and grain. But that is not the strangest news. The strangest news is one of the missiles from yesterday's attack was taken apart. The debris actually from the missile was taken apart and analyzed, and the Ukrainians found 30 different microchips in the missile that did not come from Russia, that actually came from the Western countries. 30 microchips in a Russian missile targeted Ukraine that come from Western countries. All of these microchips are sanctioned for at least a year now. How did Russia acquire them? Well, the sad news is that Russia has semi-effectively set up new chains of logistics, change of transportation, and parallel imports. What is parallel import? Well, it's a way when you import sanctioned goods through third world countries. Let's say Kyrgyzstan, could be even Turkey, Kazakhstan. See, all of these Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, German exports to Kyrgyzstan have tenfolded since the start of the full-scale invasion. I mean, I don't see any German interest in Kyrgyzstan. I see Russian interests in Germany's microchips going to Russia through Kyrgyzstan. So unfortunately, Western European microchips are getting their way into Russia through these countries. Also, the second thing that Russia does is import home electronics that are not sanctioned, take them apart and take the microchips, which are not capable at all, but they still take those microchips and put them into their missiles. Now, the minus part of this is these microchips are not military grade and they're pretty weak, so the missiles are very inaccurate and unreliable, but they still fire and they maneuver and they use GPS guidance. So this is why Russia fires missiles at heavily urbanized areas, because if the missile is incredibly inaccurate due to the usage of a microchip from a toaster, it still hits something because it's a big city. So that is a Russian technique. Unfortunately, you can do a lot of damage with a microchip from a toaster. That's the sad part. My friend, this next video is about the destruction of Russian S-300 systems and radars, and it is so good I just want to watch the whole video with you. Usually Ukraine destroys one or two. In this one video, in this one field, we see Ukrainians deploy their Saint HIMARS to visit 3 Russian S-300 systems. Also, as you can see, the distance from the front line is the absolute maximum of the HIMARS distance. Ukrainians usually don't deploy their HIMARS so close to the front lines due to them being extremely high value targets. But for this juicy target, they deployed them right on the other side of the Dnipro from the Nova Gahovka. Right on this black circle. Very dangerous location, but it was worth it. Let's watch it. On this field, self-propelled multi-channel missile guidance station from the S-300 air defense system. So this guides the missiles that are in the air. That's kind of a radar station. Now, this is a self-propelled launcher from the S-300. You can see these tubes, right? They're very familiar to everybody. And we're so used to these missile systems, seeing them burn, that we don't think actually how expensive they are. They are incredibly, we're talking over 100 million USD, even more. And Russia has a very finite number of these missile stations. Now, this is a fueling truck, right? I would guess so. Or an ammunition truck. A third S-300 launcher. Now, the vehicles change their positions in 1 hour. So these are so high value targets, even Russia knows it, and they're changing positions in every hour. And that's not it. They're changing positions again in the second hour. So they move around all the time. So it is difficult with even HIMARS to hit them. The radar station is moving around, as we can see. And now HIMARS struck them on their second positions and boom, hit one, hit another one. 200 million minus USD just with 2 missiles. The radar station damaged, fuel is leaking from the truck. We can see the leaking fuel right here. And in the next footage, boom, it's burned to the ground. Somebody was smoking carelessly, you know. I always see it. We are used to seeing these tubes burn, but we're not used to actually thinking how expensive they are. A few of those launchers could keep together an entire Estonian Defense Ministry's budget, which is sad, but we're a small country. Destroyed 3 launchers, a fuel truck damaged, 2 radar station, an incredible loss for the Russians, a loss they cannot replace because with parallel imports, You cannot build an S-300. You can build a Caliber missile with toaster chips, but not an S-300. Now, my friends, let's go to the most famous tank battle in the whole of history, the Kursk tank battle, the city of Kursk in Russia. Ukrainian authorities, intelligence actually, is reporting that Russians are planning a false flag operation in the Kursk atomic plant. Let's zoom into it. I think it's here, it's this one. Kursk Atomная станция. This is the Kursk atomic station, and Ukrainian intelligence is reporting it because if you report the enemy's plan before they do it, they cannot do it. Documents are leaked to the Ukrainian intelligence that Russians are planning to do a false flag operation, and they're setting up plans to evacuate up to 50,000 people from the surrounding areas. Also making plans to fight the Ukrainians in the surrounding areas. What makes this document weird is the fact that Russians officially label it in their documents that the doctrine is losing ground in Russia. They're getting ready for it. They're getting ready to evacuate and fight in Russia. This has not been put in any Russian official documents yet because this is out of the table. Suddenly it's in the documents. Suddenly it's in their future realities. We are going to lose ground. This says a lot about how they see their capabilities and situations and what they project into the future. Losses of territory. Do you remember the very first time Ukraine attacked the Kerch bridge? I remember being so excited about it. All of the military bloggers, we analyzed that explosion. It came from underneath the bridge. There was a lone truck on the bridge and a train, and in the next morning we saw the train on fire, and everybody was saying it couldn't be from the truck because the explosion came from underneath. Well, now the Ukrainian intelligence service leaked the very drone footage to the CNN, showing the drone actually attacking, driving into one of the pillars of the bridge. So yeah, the explosion came from underneath. This sea drone or marine drone had 850 kilograms of explosives on it, making it a very kaboomy vehicle. Insanely careless smoking. So much so, there is no comparison. The drone's name is very good. You ready for it? Sea Baby. Yeah, Sea Baby. 850 kilograms of explosives and one cigarette to be smoked carelessly. Beautiful combination. Now, if Ukraine can put almost 1 ton of explosives on one of these sea drones, and if one of these sea drones even hits any kind of Russian vehicle, doesn't matter which one it is, from the Black Sea Navy, this vehicle is going to become a submarine. This is an insane capability, which Russia doesn't have. They don't have these sea drones at all. And it seems like recently they don't really have much of an answer to them also. And now, my friends, the Russian losses of the past 24 hours, 16th of August 2023. 650 liquidated Russian personnel, well above the 7-day average. And with these numbers, I'm saying it again, Russia will declare a new mobilization. It's only a question of when. They also lost 11 tanks, 10 armored personnel vehicles, 24 artillery systems, and boom, here it is, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems. We witnessed the video. I'm so glad to see where these losses come from, because this was a beautiful video. 6 UAVs, 17 cruise missiles. Unfortunately, the cruise missiles lost always result in these photos, destroyed Ukrainian infrastructure, which technically is not lost cruise missiles, but cruise missiles that hit the targets. Very sad statistics. 30 vehicles and fuel tanks, well, that is way above the 7-day average. Did they hit a parking lot of Russian vehicles or something? I don't know. And 4 special equipment. Now we'll zoom into Russian city of Belgorod, and I wish it was the incursion from Ukraine, but it isn't. It is a pavement. A yellow-blue pavement, Ukrainian flag-colored pavement, which is for Russians a symbol of it ignites fear in them. This pavement was made yellow-blue just because of art. Yellow-blue are beautiful colors, and now Russian people are reporting to the city government that this needs to be removed, and it is removed, despite the fact that it was just finished. Yellow-blue, Ukrainian flag colors, that doesn't go. The thing is, Russia has a lot of objects that have yellow and blue in them because they're just beautiful colors. So all of these objects in the light of this war now, people are afraid. For example, their houses are painted yellow or blue. These people are afraid in their houses because the Russian government is, or their neighbors can be pointing fingers to the Russian intelligence, and they will be put away. This is the Soviet system now. So people are repainting their houses, repainting their cars, or selling their yellow or blue cars. These colors are forbidden in Russia. This shows the constant fear behind the scenes in the Russian society. You can live and you can do your stuff, but there's this constant fear that these unwritten rules that you cannot cross. You cannot buy a blue shirt, you cannot have a blue house or a yellow car, or them together, or a yellow-blue pavement, or you might go to prison for it and you didn't actually know what you did. And this is where people live, and it has an effect on the brain. It tires your brain to live in constant fear, and this is where alcoholism comes into play. Now, my friends, we'll watch a video about a Ukrainian soldier who tells a story of how he cried for the first time in the war. It's a short one, but I want to share it with you. It's a human story and we need those. What are you fighting for? You know, I had the first time when I cried during the war. I was a division intelligence chief. We were on our way to fight, worked out and went back. The shop was open. We wanted to buy stockings, not stockings as in women's stockings, but food and water and stuff like that. Washing powder, etc. An old man of 90s came along. He was walking and leaning on his bicycle because he couldn't walk. He came up to us and pulled sweets out of his pocket. We asked him why and offered to buy him bread. He replied, "No guys, I know how it is. We are fighting for them, for those who fought for us." And now, my friends, with this a little bit of a sad and human note, we will go on to the fun part of the video, which is naming the Patreons, because I butcher these names and your ears will bleed and you cannot do anything about it, so bear through it. These people support the channel and help me out very much. Kole Antoni Kimeris Sutton. I had to read this one, it's so difficult. Kole Antoni Kimeris Sutton. Thank you. Another one, oh my god. Christopher Dimitrios Panara. Sounds like a Porsche model or something. A Panamera, you know. Well, Panara. It's a Panara. Thank you for becoming a Patreon. Jakob Vilke. Easy one. Kati Exo. I've seen your name fourth time. Thank you for the fourth time then. Weil Braun. Thank you for becoming a patron. If you like what I do, Patreon link is in the description below. Also, my friends, check out my Twitter account, because in there you'll see the most important events happening in this war any time of the day. Also, check out my Instagram account. I'll be going back to Ukraine soon, and I'm doing some secret projects that I don't hide on my Instagram, so I'll see you there also. Until my next video, my friends, Slava Ukraini.